What's going on, people? We got some more card reviews today. We're just going to hop right on into it. I think this will put us at just about current, or maybe like 3 or 4 cards behind. But if we do one more session tomorrow, we should be able to basically, clean things up. We're starting off today with Hannibal Traven. It is a legendary intelligence card, 7 cost, 5/5. After you play an action, Hannibal Traven learns it. Play all learned actions from your discard pile on last gasp. So this is a super interesting card. It's one that I'm pretty excited to meme with. I don't think you really need to play that many actions to really get good value from this card. Like, I know everyone's gonna be like, oh, if you play triple lightning bolt and then it dies, you get to play 3 more lightning bolts and then you deal 24 damage just with those lightning bolts. I mean, yes, that's true. But the odds that this thing survives that long aren't super high. But also, it doesn't need to. Like, I'm thinking even just like in a generic battle mage shell, if you get like a rapid shot and rapid shot and a lightning bolt, or even almost like a rapid shot and a firebolt can make this card worth it. Because then you get to draw an extra card. Like, there's just you don't have to do much for this card to be solid. Obviously, just playing it on turn 7 and hoping it sticks until next turn is a little risky. Ideally, you want to have something ready to go. Even if it's like a lesser ward, you can set that up, and that might not be too bad. Otherwise, I don't think you slam this on turn 7 often. Unless your opponent's like out of cards or has played all of their removal. Because you don't want to just have this die right away. But I do think this is a pretty powerful card, and I think there will be some stuff that gets set up with this card. It's a little tough to fully get going. All the craziest combos will be a little difficult. Like, it's not super likely you'll play this conscription, have it survive, clear your board, and then it dies and you conscription again. That's not as likely, but it's still, like, something that can be done. is, I guess, what I'll say. I'm excited to play around with the card. I think in those little micro-value moments of, like, recycling Sorcerer's Negation, even just that, I think this card will be better than expected. I think this is, like, a 3.5 to 4-star card. It's just a little bit slow, so that's why I'm leaning towards 3.5 stars. There's a lot of ways to silence, and we've gotten even more ways to silence. And that'll be the one thing that holds this card down. But I think there'll be a lot of ways to pull this card off. Next up, we've got Unexpected Arrival. I think this is another one that I think we may have talked about, but so many of these cards are super similar that I don't know. But just in case, Unexpected Arrival is a 3-cost action. You invade, and then you summon a random Daedra with cost equal to your Oblivion Gate's level. I really think we talked about this one. Oh well. Invade is probably worth like 1-ish Magicka on its own, give or take, maybe a half a Magicka. And by turn 3, we've seen a fair amount of 1-cost and 2-cost invade cards. So, assuming you curved out, and you invaded on turn 1 and 2 and your portal's still up. If you invade on turn 3, your portal will be a level 3, and then you'll summon a random Daedra with level 3, and then it'll get +1/+1. That's pretty solid. And just the invade is pretty solid. I think you'd probably rather play the 3 Magicka 3/3 invade card over this card, now that we've seen that guy, since it's also willpower. But this card's not, like, dead in the water. There's some hope there. And if Invade is really, really good, you're going to pack as much Invade as you can into a deck, which may give this card a little bit of a boost. I don't know if we talked about this card. I don't know what I rated it before, but looking at it today, I think it's like a 2.5-star card, maybe. It'll allow you to stay on curve, and it'll keep your Invade going. So I think there's value there regardless. Next up, we've got Whodunit. It's an 8 Magicka action, costs 1 less for each creature in your discard pile, and the ability is gain +2 max Magicka. So this card's a little interesting, because every single deck in the game over the course of the game will get this down to cost 0. And that's solid. 2 max Magicka for 0 is solid. It's just a matter of, like, at that point, how worth it is it? Like, ramp gets less good as the game goes on. It's always good, don't get me wrong. Like, if you're 2 slow decks battling it out and one person has like 19 max Magicka and the other has 12, there is an inherent advantage there. But the better ramp is better earlier. The earlier you ramp, the better. So you would need to, I don't know. I don't want to say you need to do anything, but like if you're playing like a token deck, you can theoretically get this down costing pretty cheap by turn 4 or 5. And then you'd be able to get like a, if you could cast this on turn 4 or 5 for like 3 magicka, I think this is pretty solid. Anything lower is really, really good. You just have to deal with spending a card and getting no immediate value from it and waiting a turn to be able to cash in on that extra max magicka boost. And I don't think all decks can really handle that right now. This is a tough one because I don't want to like underrate the max magicka boost because that's obviously incredible. But at the same time, this is a very risky move that you really need to make sure you have the cards in hand ready to play. And including this in your deck could mean that you don't draw that answer that you need. But something like Telvanni, I think, could probably pull this off because like they can handle taking Hail Mary Cruel Fire Blooms because their deck just has so much greatness in it that they survive anyway. So I think some decks will run this card. I think many decks, most decks will not run this card, but some decks that have the backbone of the deck otherwise to run this, like I think I could see Empire running this as well. Empire is kind of similar to Telvanni in a way that they both have like a lot of high value cards. So maybe those two decks could handle running this. Off the top of my head, I want to give this like a 2 to 2.5 star rating. There's just, without a body attached to it, it's hard to supersell, and we saw things like that Supply Runner that I think is an even more tempting source of ramp, so I think this might fall to the wayside over Supply Runner. But again, we'll see. Next up, we've got Great Sigil Stone. 4 magicka, unique legendary support. Upon activation, you invade, and on last gasp, you draw a random Daedra from your deck and give it +2/+2. So obviously 3 invasions on one card is incredible, and the last gasp of drawing a card and giving it +2/+2 is pretty solid. It's a great little consolation prize. But this is a very slow support. Like, if you're playing this on turn 4, I don't want to compare it directly to Mundus Stone, but it's kind of similar to Mundus Stone, where it's like an almost do-nothing turn 4, and you have to kind of try and gain that tempo back afterwards. I don't think this is quite as much of a loss, because you can invade right away with this card. So maybe there's some use there. I just don't know if this ultimately makes the cut in invade decks when they have so many different invade options. Maybe this is the kind of card that they hang on to until the later game. However, if you can get to the last gasp on this thing, and your portal's pretty well upgraded, getting a +2/+2 Daedra from your deck, that will also presumably have a cost reduction on it, I think is very solid. So we'll see where that heads from here. I just have a tough time rating this card. Like, I don't deny the card itself is good. I'm struggling to see where this fits. Because Invade is looking like it wants to be a very snowball-y, kind of like board swarming strategy. And this doesn't play into that. This plays almost into like a slower Invade deck. Maybe that's why I'm having trouble picturing it, because in my head, a slow Invade deck hasn't even been on the menu for me. So yeah, I'd probably give this card like a 2-star rating. Higher if slower invade becomes viable, but I just don't see it being a thing right now. But that being said, it's the kind of card that I want to play with and mess around with. It's also unique support, so it's really hard to count on. Maybe it's a 2.5-star card. I don't know. I'm really torn on this one. Next up, we've got Martin Septim. 4 magicka, 3/7. At the start of your turn, you gain all unspent magicka from your last turn. When you have 30 or more max magicka, or 30 or more magicka, Martin Septim changes into a 30/30 Avatar of Akatosh. So this is going to be a really fun card to play around with. I've seen people talk about it being very strong in like a Slay Ebonheart type of deck, and I think that is probably pretty true. Not the same Slay Ebonheart that we've come to know, but with your Venom Tongues and your Lethal Pings, and then your Hist Mages you can run, and now you can run Supply Runner, you can probably just naturally ramp yourself. I've seen those decks naturally ramp themselves into the 18 to 20 magicka range, and at that point you just have to leave 10 magicka left over with this guy on the board and have him survive. Now, the key with this, and I'm assuming this would work this way, is when he transforms, if he can attack right away, If he can, then this guy is going to be really, really cool and incredible. If he can't, this card's going to be kind of trash. The transformation portion, anyway. Because honestly, I think this card is playable as a 4 Magicka 3/7 with this effect. Like, forget the bottom part. Just at the start of your turn, gain all unspent Magicka from your last turn. I think if that was the text, this card is still playable. 3/7 is not the best stats, but it's still passable. And gaining all of your unspent Magicka means that you can... It's like a pseudo ramp. You can make a higher power play if you didn't have anything set up last turn. So I think this card is pretty solid, actually. I think the Avatar of Akatosh portion of it is going to be slightly memey, and you can't really count on it. But I think the top part of gaining all of your unspent Magicka is going to be quite doable. I still don't think this is like an insane card, but I think it's going to be a powerful card that the right decks can definitely make happen. And 30 Magicka sounds like a ton, but with the amount that these decks can ramp, it's really only like have a little bit left over, which isn't too bad. So I'd give this card probably like a 3.5 star rating. Meme potential and fun potential is through the roof. I cannot wait to give this card a try, though. Whew. Next up, Blackwood Alchemist. It is a 3 Magicka 1/4, and it gains +2/+0 when your max Magicka increases. So it's a little awkward. So if it survives until your next turn, it's a 3/4 that can still be silenced, which is like just a passable body at that point. So you probably need to ramp with this on the board right away. At that point, it can scale pretty nicely and become like a 5/4 after that, and then it gets better and better. So like this is a 2 Magicka worth of stats that can be executed or silenced until your next turn. Then it becomes evenly statted for the cost. And then if it survives another turn or you ramp again, then it can become like a 4 Magicka worth of stats. So I don't want to say it's completely dead in the water, because a deck that ramps a lot can definitely make this work. But it'd be like almost like an aggressive ramping deck, which I don't think we've really seen. And like, I don't think you run this over Tree Minder if you're trying to ramp. I don't think you run this over Supply Runner. Yeah, there's a lot of competition in those early game slots that I don't know if this card can break through. But it's definitely a interesting, like, I can't even say OTK, because you can't ramp that many times in a turn. It's an okay deck card if you're like a mid-range ramping deck, which I don't think is a thing. So I'd probably give this card like a 2-star rating. There's a little bit of oomph there, just I don't think there's enough to ultimately make the cut. Next up, we've got Black Soul Gem, a 4 Magicka support. When a friendly creature dies, give a random creature in your hand +1/+1. So this is pretty interesting. If Shrine of Namira wasn't nerfed, I think this card would be like super crazy, because that deck could just keep refilling itself. So you could just play like a bunch of cheap creatures, almost like a Zoolock from Hearthstone. I still think this card is solid. The only issue is you're going to run out of resources eventually. But getting +1/+1 whenever a friendly creature dies is not bad. I think this could be kind of good in like a token spell sword kind of deck, but paying 4 Magicka just to get a support out is a little risky, especially when you want to set things like Divine Fervor up. So taking turn 4 almost completely off isn't that great. So that's going to be a tough sell for me. But there's probably going to be a deck that can swing this. I just think it's a little slow to fit into a lot of current strategies and a lot of current decks. It'll be a fun meme card, and it's definitely a card that I want to mess around with. But yeah, maybe like a this is a meme deck. This is not a real deck, but a creatureless deck that summons creatures through actions and has something like, I don't know, Cliff Racer or Nord Firebrand in hand. That's the only creature. So that this card can continuously buff the one charging creature and try and go for like a charge OTK. Maybe that's a fun meme, but in general, I think this is probably like a 2-star card. But it's very interesting and a fun card, so I want to give it credit for that. Next up, we've got Fated Wraith. 5 Magicka 1/3 with the summon ability, draw cards equal to Fated Wraith's power. So how high do you need to get the power for this card to be worth it? It's probably okay at a 2/3 that draws 2. And if you can get it to a 3/3 that draws 3, this card is very solid. I think that's as simple as that. But that means you have to buff it from hand, either using that Black Soul Gem power. You can rally it. Maybe 5th Legion Trainer, Divine Fervor, or Clan Captain. Things like that would make this card okay. Because you really need to hit at least 2 just to feel like not horrible. And like I said, ideally 3 cards. Because then you get a 3/3 that draws 3, and that's very, very good. So you need to buff this thing at least twice, which isn't impossible. Otherwise, this is like too slow of a card. But I think that there is some potential here. We have enough ways of buffing things as soon as they come into play, and enough ways of buffing things in hand. We've even seen some cards that buff things in hand. So I think this card is not dead in the water. I think this is probably like a 3-star card, to be honest. And I know it doesn't look like a 3-star card, but I think it is. And it could potentially even be higher than that, just because there's so many ways to buff cards in hand that I think this card may push some of those strategies to be a thing, because it's hard to run out of juice when your 5 magic a card can come down and potentially draw you 3, 4 plus cards. I think that would be incredible. And this is a card that I'm really excited to give a try. So yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Let me know what you guys think of these cards down below in the comment section. I think we'll do one more of these tomorrow as the day before the expansion drops, and then we'll see how things go from there. As always, thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.